Thank you very much, Chris. And hello to all of you. I'm Titia van der Werf. I'm working for OCLC Research. And this is the fourth time I've been to an RLUK meeting. And I feel very privileged that now I can also finally give a presentation to you. Thank you. And also thank you to Mike for helping me in giving me the background information that I needed, like Janet said this morning, and explaining to me the differences between COPEC and RLUK database and all the different reports that you are making and that are relevant to this subject. So yes, I am not going to say very much about the report itself, because the survey has already been explained by Jackie Dooley in the previous RLUK meeting. No, what I would like to do today is go with you through the major findings from that report, and also what we've been talking about today and in previous meetings about special collections, surveys, and our findings, and to try to identify areas where we could maybe also continue to cooperate. So that's what my talk about. I would like to start by giving some more context on how OCLC research tries to engage with research libraries in Europe, and how we are trying to adapt our strategy to the specific landscape of Europe. And then I will zoom into the shared interests areas of RLUK and OCLC research. And finally, I'd like to propose some areas, some of the challenges where I think that we could do some productive work together. So here then is our partnering strategy in Europe in a nutshell. I think most of you are aware of the fact that we have individual relationships with research libraries in the UK, but especially also in the US, and on the continent a bit less. In the Netherlands we have 4 partners, but these are individual partners. And what we would like to do is also shape better or stronger liaison relationships with consortia at national levels in Europe, because we are aware of the fact that in Europe national entities are more important. And now I'm talking from a US perspective, because of course OCLC research is very strong in the US. And then thirdly, we also look at other partnerships, which are more opportunistic partnerships, trying to find synergies where we can. So let me go quickly through this one. In practice in the UK, this means that we will continue to nurture our individual partners. The partnership brings a broader and global perspective to individual partner libraries in the UK, and it facilitates collaboration between peer institutions across the Atlantic. The partnership has 22 members in the UK, which is quite big. I've listed the names here. 19 of them are also RLUK members. So there is a significant overlap between both membership organizations. And this fact in itself already points out that there is potential for improved liaison between OCLC research and RLUK around shared R&D activities. With our partners in the UK, we have years of experience in working together on specific projects. And this is one example of project. And I will give you a few others, and I'm not going to explain each of them, but just to show you that there are projects, ongoing projects. This is the SHARES program, where we bring partners together from different institutions, from different countries, and where we're trying in the area, especially of special collections, to encourage interlending practices and to build trust between those partners so that they actually are more amenable to lending their precious old books or archive items amongst each other. So here are some other projects, and I've put the names of the UK partners in those projects, but of course there are other partners involved in those projects as well. Maybe you will recognize some of them as you're looking at them. So, while we continue to engage with our individual institutions, we recognize that we also have to engage at another level, and especially at the national level. So we will be looking at national libraries specifically, but also at consortia like RLUK in the UK, but also, for example, UKB in the Netherlands, etc. And we have, of course, already very good relations with RLUK. So what we are looking for now is to strengthen this relationship. And mainly because, we would like to ensure continuity of the results that we then achieve and to achieve joint success and mutual benefits. And to do this, actually, OCLC EMEA has put a proposal forward to the RLUK board for a memorandum of understanding where we are proposing to work together on several levels. And OCLC research is one of those aspects of the memorandum. So, with RLUK, we are trying to establish a pattern that we will try also to unfold in other European countries. And we are specifically looking at the overlap between the RLUK strategic agenda and the OCLC research agenda to create synergies, to invest sustained effort over time and ensure continuity and effective results. And we are addressing RLUK as a whole here, so it's really the national focus that is important in this aspect. And finally, our strategy also targets other potential partners, agencies, data aggregations, like, for example, we are working together with Europeana, funding agencies, we work, for example, together with JISC, etc., with whom we might engage in temporary joint activities. And here are some examples of such agencies in the UK with whom we have partnered before. So, enough about the way we're trying to partner in Europe and in the UK. Let's look now at the shared interest areas between the RLUK strategic agenda and the OCLC research agenda. There are interesting overlaps in the area of supporting research workflows. The changing nature of scholarly communication and the scholarly record, and of course there is much interest in research data and the role of libraries. We've heard this morning already. But I'm not going to dwell on this one too much because today we're talking about special collections. So there is another area in the agenda of RLUK, which is the area of collaborating to achieve efficiencies and reduce costs. And there is a significant overlap as well that might be well worth investigating another time, because now we're going to focus on the special collections. But at OCLC Research, we are doing a lot of investigations with WorldCat data, And because that is an advantage of having built, of course, a big database during the years. So we have a very big, rich data set on which we can do a lot of investigations, data mining, and we can analyze, for example, the number of unique holdings, materials with special requirements. We can collect all kinds of data for decision making in preservation or in digitization, etc. But of course, the data has to be in WorldCat, and that is not always the case for specific partners. But for the frequently asked analytics, OCLC is now also has been developing a new service offering in this area, which makes that we at research are doing less of the day-to-day type of data analytics, but we are focusing more on the more interesting and researchy stuff, the more innovative stuff. And research is also looks at enhancing the metadata in many ways, for example, with Werf and FAST and named entity recognition, exposing the data on the web via linked data. Very much interesting work going on in this area. But again, that's not specifically special collections, so let's go further. This is special collections. We call it mobilizing unique materials, and you call it promoting unique and distinctive collections. But it's the same, and there is a lot of overlap in this area. I hope we could identify something in this overlap, an activity that goes beyond surveys, making surveys, but actually doing something in practice, where we could maybe help the RLUK community as a whole forward. Currently, we are investing most effort in BornDigital and in promoting the circulation of special collections via interlending. But we have done much more relevant work in the past, and we think that maybe this is also an area where we should try to promote a bit more the work that we have done. Because from the survey we have seen that some of the needs and some of the questions actually address issues that have already been investigated by OCLC research, and it's probably just a matter of promoting those reports, explaining them, maybe via UK-focused webinars or roadshows, together with some of our colleagues and partners. And then there is, of course, a new area of digital humanities, which is also very interesting, but in which we haven't done much yet. We are still very much in the orientation phase. And I mention also Archives Hub and Archive Grid because they are similar, and because there is a lot of interesting work going on there. We are doing a lot of experimentation with Archive Grid. We're trying to improve the discovery of archival collections. We are doing named entity recognition so that we can recognize and disambiguate names of persons and organizations in EAD descriptions. And we do, for example, at the moment, a very exciting project where we are gamifying, we call it, where we are trying to get experts or probably only experts to join collections together, so in the form of a game, so that you can start interrelating collections that are related, but not through the descriptions. So here are the top 8 challenges that came out of the survey for special collections. They're not exactly the same as those that Chris has been showing to us, but you can still recognize the main ones. Outreach, space and facilities, BornDigital, collection care, which is mainly preservation and management of collections, cataloging and archival processing, Digitisation, Access, Staff Development. And there were two others, ranked lower. So let's take a closer look at those. Which ones could we meaningfully start to address together? So what I've done is first I've tried to identify the challenges that fit within our current research activities and for which we have also expertise in-house. And secondly, I've tried to identify which activities are typically partnership activities, which we do with individual partners, and so which would be out of scope, not necessarily, but probably, and activities which could be joint RLUK, OCLC research activities, and which need to have a more national scope. So let me start by ticking off those challenges that we, as OCLC research, are not likely to address right now. And I have rearranged the remaining challenges. Putting digitization and adding sharing under the challenge of access. And the left-hand side now falls under our current research focus. That is not to say that the right-hand side is not important. Again, here there is room for promoting work that we have done already. And we might want to look into this further, but I suggest we first look at the left-hand side. So that's why I will skip the next two very quickly, because this is where I'm looking at these on the right-hand side. And there are actually interesting aspects here, especially the lower one, where in the Knowing the Need report, surrogacy as a preservation strategy is actually promoted quite heavily. So that brings us back to digitization. And in cataloging and archival processing, which is really very much about retrospective cataloging, what Chris already mentioned is that modern materials are also added to backlogs, and those are mostly BornDigital, and that brings us back to the left-hand side again. So that brings me to the serious business. Outreach. So this is a clearly articulated need in the survey. The need for staff to develop skills in outreach, including even becoming more comfortable with classroom teaching. I did take note of Andrew Green's comment of the $1 million man, the not trying to make your staff all round, and expert, and fundraiser, and PR and communication expert, and teachers, etc., but calling upon external expertise from your organization, from your university. It might nevertheless be important to try and skill our people up to make them a little bit more open, so that they are open to outreach. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be experts in all these different areas. We might take a look at where, like Chris says, we might have to take a look at the use cases for the success stories. At the Yale event of our ORLP conference at Yale, in June, in the beginning of June, we will also have an outreach workshop. That's actually the first time that we will really talk with our partners about outreach in special collections. So from that workshop, some interesting outcome might come, which we could then continue to work on and repeat maybe a similar workshop in the UK. Then we have BornDigital. So from the survey outcomes, we note that BornDigital is under-collected, under-managed, and that there is very little support from the management. This is actually an activity BornDigital that has been taken up by Ricky Irway and her colleagues, Jackie Dooley also, in which they are looking at very easy first steps to start working on BornDigital. Not waiting for policies in place, not waiting for infrastructures in place, just start doing it. It comes in on a hard disk, and then what you do next. So those first steps, report and activities are on the way, and I'm sure that Ricky and Jackie are going to continue and try to identify next new aspects to look into. But the audience of this activity is typically small institutions with limited IT support. So I'm not sure if RLUK at the moment, the membership are mostly big institutions, I think. Although I've heard that you're going to broaden the membership, so that might change. Anyway, but there is at the higher management level also a need for strategy development, budget allocation, and all those kind of things. You could decide to do this like in the US, where the SAA and the ARL are talking together, and where OCLC research is not involved. But something has to be done in that area. So that's why I just put it here up as a suggestion. Okay, extending access through sharing. This is basically the survey outcomes is that there's huge concern about access, and because about usage mainly, because it's when you have to give access to this old material that you have to decide, okay, is it in a good condition? No, maybe first I have to do something about it, and then I can give access to it. So usage is a huge concern. And also what Jackie noticed is that the costs of digitization are very high, a bit prohibitive, she thought. So this is yet another area where we might work on awareness raising, on trust building, on trying to break open those barriers and to provide more access. And this is typically an area where we have, as OCLC research, quite some experience. My battery is going down. Yeah. Okay, next one. Digitization. Extending access through digitization. Typically, national libraries, of course, have a role in the national digitization strategy. In 1 minute, good. In prioritizing, good for my battery. So, and in the past, massive amounts of digitization projects have happened, also microfilming projects in the 80s and the 90s. But very little of all that is online and is really accessible. Only 6%, I think, according to the survey. So, and a lot of that is in the same in the US, in the Netherlands, in other countries as well. So it would be interesting to look into what are the barriers, and probably it's lack of local infrastructure. So it would be interesting to try and do something about this, and maybe together work on an action plan to make all digitalized collections available online for public access, and maybe also to link it to European projects, Europeana type of projects. That might be interesting. Then, the last one, digital humanities. I really think this is a very exciting area to start doing some investigations. In the previous slide, it was more access for the public, and this is really access for digital humanities, so for research. And that brings all kinds of different questions, because the public has different requirements and different needs than researchers. So I just put up here some of the questions that come up during talks, during conferences on digital humanities. I think this is a very interesting area. I'm not sure if this is something we can do together, but it would be interesting.